Well, welcome everyone. I'm Walter from the Earth Angel Meetup Group. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. It's definitely one of the biggest questions, I guess. Why are we here? And if you want to find out a lot more about sort of the whole Earth Angel Meetup Group, please watch the previous video and subscribe to give you a better understanding of what that's all about. But that's definitely the biggest question that everyone has. Why are we here? What's our purpose? What's your purpose? And really the quick answer is that we're here to create and experience our reality. We are creators, the same way as pretty much everything in the universe is in a state of creation. We're part of that universe, and we ourselves create. We're consciousness. And we have the power and the ability, have been given the power and the ability to actually create the world around us based on our beliefs. And let me just explain that a little bit more. Really, there's 7 major laws. And then this is just information that I've taken and learned to experience over my lifetime. Taking ideas such as Einstein's law of relativity, biocentrics, and quantum mechanics, and really about any theologies that you can think of tie back to some of these. Some heretic laws are also part of this, and really these are the 7 that I've taken. You'll see some mention 12, some mention 14. But just from what I've studied and what I've experienced, they're either takeoffs or spin-offs of the main 7 laws, and then from those 7 laws, they all are interrelated. As you go through the process of creation, we'll go over that throughout this video. All of that comes together in the principle of creation. So that'll be the 7 laws. We'll just go over that. And then finally, how they all come together and interact to kind of drive the whole principle of creation, and how you go about what steps you can take to actually create the life that you desire. Everyone is capable of it. Everyone has that innate ability, whether you're conscious of it or not. So I'll just explain it. If it makes sense, fantastic. That's what it's all about, is just getting a dialogue and sharing ideas. Please comment and give your ideas and your thoughts on these. So let's start from the top. The first law is the law of oneness. And that basically states that everything in the world, in the universe, is made up of energy. Einstein, with his theory of relativity, Einstein his entire life knew, he came up really with the laws around gravity and how the celestial planets and galaxies all interact, and the processes that allow them to be. But his ideas, his theories and his laws actually fell apart when you went down to the quantum level, so the sort of microscopic atomic level. So when you're talking about atoms and neutrons but he knew that there couldn't be one set of rules for the cosmos and another set of rules for the atomic level. The laws at the time of quantum physics and quantum mechanics fell apart when you took them up to the celestial level, when you're talking about solar systems and planets. But they work perfectly fine when you're talking about the atomic level. Things really... the rules kind of fly out the window when you're talking at a quantum or an atomic level. Particles can exist in multi places at the same time, and the world as we know it at this macro level, at this, when you bunch all of those atomic particles together to make us, there's almost like a different set of rules that we can perceive. So law of oneness just says, what Einstein was trying to find was a unifying theory, one that explains the cosmos, and the rules and the same laws would apply to atomic particles in the quantum level. He died before he could actually find that. That was his life, one of his life works. But other physicists took the helm, and they actually, the string theory and the unified theory actually have come into play. And they actually found that at the root of all, everything is made up of atoms and electrons and protons, etc. So at the root of every single particle, the root elements, etc. If you get down to the neutron and what builds up the neutron, if you go even deeper into the neutron, into the core of the actual nucleus, they're finding that it's really a single piece of energy, the same type of energy. The same type of energy is in every single piece of matter in the universe. It's just the same energy is just vibrating in different ways to actually produce the various elements of the universe. So they found 13 different characteristics of that energy. So it can pulsate at a certain vibration. It can twist. It can elongate and elastic, and so 13 different characteristics of that energy. The same energy, just pulsating and behaving in different ways to produce a hydrogen atom, to produce an oxygen atom, a sulfur atom, a carbon, etc. So what they're finding is that they call it the God particle. Basically, the core, the root energy of all matter is the same energy, just vibrating in different ways to produce the universe that we see. So in the same way that your voice, our voice box, it's the same voice box can vibrate at different frequencies to produce various notes, unlimited number of notes, right? You can go low all the way to high. Well, the same voice box, the same, different notes are being produced by the same voice box. So it's the same idea around energy, that unified theory. So the law of oneness just states that everything exists as one, and when you look at it from, an overall universe relative to the entire universe, everything is part of that same energy, and everything, the sum total, is one. So that's the law of oneness. Everything exists in that overall energy, let's say, field, the giant overall field of oneness. And many people, including me, believe when you speak of God, that is God. When you look at the overall, all energy in the universe, that intelligent energy that tells various molecules to and particles to behave in different ways, the same intelligent energy drives the entire universe. Okay, so that's a law of oneness. We are all one. I'm sure you've heard that many times. So the second law is the law of vibration. So law of vibration just states that, like I was saying, your voice box vibrates at a certain frequency. Energy is always in motion. It never stands still. We can perceive that a glass is just standing still, but it's just that it is moving. If you look at the atomic level, things are moving around at light speed. Things are crashing into each other. It's just from relative to our perspective, the time it's moving at such a slow pace, like things are deteriorating at a slow perceivable space. But things, if you leave something for an extended period, you'll see that if it's metal, it'll start to corrode. It starts to lose its color. If it's brass, it turns, or silver, it turns sort of that brownish color. So it starts oxidizing. So there's always movement. Energy is, matter is always in a state of vibration. There's constant movement. Nothing stands still. Okay, so that's the law of vibration. The third is probably the most famous law when you're talking about self-help, is the law of attraction. So what that states is that energy, like energy, attracts like energy. Everything in the universe is some type of energy. Our bodies are just a consolidation of particles that are energy, rotating around each other and forming into molecules, forming into billions and billions of cells to make us. We are energy. The wind is energy. Our thoughts are energy. Our emotions are energy. everything that exists is some form of energy. And so when you talk about law of attraction, like energy attracts like energy. Okay? And that's basically the root of the law of attraction. So law of attraction on its own is the basis of the book of The Secret and all the similar philosophies. But basically the energy that is put out is, like energy tends to attract like energy. So whatever that energy is, there isn't no such thing as a good or bad energy. Energy just is energy. So if you put out the energy of positivity, of love, you tend to attract positivity and love. If you put out energy of regret and hatefulness and those types of what we call negative energy, they put you in a lower sort of vibration, then you tend to attract that type of energy. Okay, so that's the law of attraction. The fourth law that directly impacts the universe is the law of reaction. So with every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. We all learned that from physics in high school, and that's true with any energy. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the law of attraction. But with every energy that's put out, there's an opposite and equal reaction. And a lot of theologies call that karma. And basically, what you do unto others, it has done unto you. That's basically the root of those theologies, those theories, is the law of reaction. So with every energy, if it's a positive energy that's put out there, then you're going to get an equal, positive energy back. Just as a simple example, if someone walks into a room and they're happy and loving and joyful, we can pick that up. We pick up that energy. You basically are vibrating at a higher level, and you can actually sense that. And so when you feel that positive, if someone's nice to you and really energized and loving, you just feel the need to reciprocate that back. And the same is true when someone's, your significant other is in a really bad mood and says something angry to you. Your first reaction is an equal and opposite reaction to that anger. You're able to control that, of course, but our initial instinct is to send back what is received. All right, the fifth law is the law of polarity. And this is a kind of a vital law to explain why, why do we suffer? Why do those things happen? Why are there bad things? Why do bad things occur to us? That doesn't make any sense. God's a loving God. Why does that happen? Well, law of polarity just states that everything has its opposites. Not just everything has its opposites. The two things, like for example, black and white. So white cannot exist without black being there in relative perspective, right? You could say that white is the the total absence of black, and black is the total absence of white. Both can't exist without the other in this relative universe. That's the beauty of it, is that both can exist without the other, and both exist at exactly the same time. They're basically just different relative states of each other. But for one to exist, the other also has to exist. So when you speak of, when you set your mind, if you like to create, in your existence, for example, you want to be a millionaire, for example. Well, if you aren't a millionaire at the moment, you're setting the bar. Well, let's assume you're setting the bar quite high. Let's say you make, just as an example, $50,000 a year, and you want to set a lofty goal in your mind of $1 million a year. By the way, there is no such thing as lofty or unlofty. You can literally accomplish anything you set your mind to. But let's say in your mind you're at 50,000 and you want to attain $1 million. You're now setting a brand new thing that's never existed before in your world, in your existence. $1 million a year, something brand new. It doesn't exist. Now, in order for that, experience for you to experience that new level of creation, the opposite also needs to exist. You have to experience the opposite of that new level of creation. Anyone that has any success in any field will tell you that in order to attain that, but when they're successful in business, they always have a round of, before attaining $1 million revenue, you have you have to experience the opposite of attaining the $1 million, not having a lot of money, scrounging for that month. The one cannot exist without the other, and they, once to experience that new level of $1 million, you have to have experienced the opposite of that. And if you've already experienced the opposite of that, then that's great. You don't need to experience that to attain that other level. You've kind of plateaued the bottom, and now you are able to experience the opposite, the polar opposite of that. If you haven't, then that's just part of the creation process. Okay, so one cannot exist without the other. So why is there suffering? Well, you need to experience that suffering in order to experience the opposite of the suffering. So when you set those lofty goals, it is simply natural to expect things to experience the opposite, so that you can actually have that other new thing be created. Okay, so that's an important point. And so that is the law of polarity. It goes along with, when we get to it, the law of one of the other laws. We'll kind of circle back to see again how all of these are all happening at the same time. They're all when you're trying the process of creation, all of these come into being. So hopefully, if you understand the processes of what these laws are, and your role and how you can use them, sort of once you have an understanding of them, you can use them in your process of creation, and they actually will make sense to you, or it will make a bit more sense to you. The next law is the law of relativity. So that's Einstein's, of course, great contribution to mankind and humankind, is the law of relativity. So what that states is that nothing exists on its own without being relative to something else. So for example, when you ask someone how fast they're going, always, in the back of our mind, when we answer, how fast am I going, it's always relative to you looking at them. So if you're happen to be standing still, well, they happen to be standing still. So it's an unspoken term, but basically you say, how fast am I going? In your mind you say, well, relative to me, you're not moving, you're standing still. But really, to say, how fast am I going, the real question is, well, relative to what? You can't just say, how fast am I going? How fast am I going relative to me standing beside you? If I was, if someone was in a car traveling 60 kilometers an hour the opposite direction, relative to the person in the car, you'd be traveling 60 kilometers an hour away from them. Relative to, the moon, you'd be traveling, 10,000 kilometers, an hour in space. And relative to a star, you're traveling, hundreds and hundreds of millions of miles per second. Everything is relative to something else. And the same, in circling back to the law of polarity, everything has its opposites. And everything exists relative to those two polarities, right? When you say it's a shade of gray, everything is either black or white or some shade of gray in between. When you're talking about setting a new goal, for yourself, something new to create in your life, you know, you need to always look at it, no matter what's happening around you. It's always important to keep, you know, that energy high, keep positive energy, keep focused on your goal at all times. And now just understand the process. Because of polarity, you're creating something new. You need to experience possibly the opposite. If you haven't experienced it yet, you need to experience it for that other thing to be created. So you just, as you're going through it, always keep your eye on the prize. Relative to the, you know, generating $1 million, you have to go through those other trials and tribulations, whatever that is, but your eye is always on that prize. And you just continue your belief and keep your focus, you know, on that goal. Okay, so that's the law of relativity. Nothing exists on its own. It's always in relation to something else. Another way to think about it is, you know, with this law of polarity and, you know, the law of oneness. You know, relative to all energy in the universe, we are one. We are, you know, infinite, basically. We take up, we're part of the larger universe, all the energy in the universe. We're part of that larger energy of the universe. So relative to the universe, we are the universe, you know. And at the same time, relative to our existence now, we are one with a small o. Relative to the universe, we are one with a large O. So we're, you know, part of all the energy, and we're a subset of that, and, you know, existing now as a singular, you know, part of that overall, a drop in the ocean, for example. Okay, but both exist at the exact same time. Okay, just different states of relative. Those are two polar opposites, and we're always existing in some relative capacity between those two things. And the seventh law is finally the law of rhythm. And what that states is that all of us are experiencing, all of the universe exists always in a cyclical pattern. It's always in a wave. Things go up, things go down. We have the 4 seasons. You know, we breathe in, we breathe out. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. It's always in cyclical patterns. And that will always exist, and we just need to understand that. You will never have a period of constant up, and you will never have a period of constant down. It is naturally always going to fluctuate. And going back to setting, you know, goals, lofty goals to yourself, the higher that goal is, the more you'll need to experience the opposite of that goal. But you will always, like a wave, the wave has a downturn and then has an upturn. So the more quote-unquote negative, or when things are really not going the way you would like or would expect, just keep your eye on that prize, on your goal. Believe it, have it be part of you. And always keep your eyes towards it, because with every downturn there is always an upturn. Every successful business owner will tell you that before the things took off, if they have, you know, set their goals for revenues or etc., they always have a period of not knowing where they're going to get their next paycheck and all of that. They experience it and then just not battle through it, but just get through it, experience those things. Once you experience them, you can now create the other thing, the opposite, the polar opposite, and it simply is a wave that carries forward. As long as you keep your energy in a positive state, constantly focused on what you want to create, you'll get through the negative part, and it will automatically, you know, will flow towards that thing that you have set as your goal and you believe you will attain. The problem is when we reach those bottom slopes, we think, when you don't learn or aren't aware of it, you think, oh, I've hit rock bottom. This is who I am, and now your energy stay there, and you lose focus of your goal. So, sort of the energy is preparing that cycle, preparing all that, making sure that for this to exist, the opposite needs to exist. So you're experiencing that, the opposite of what you're attaining. But our mind will lead us to believe sometimes that if you're not guarding it, that is who you are. You reach that rock bottom, say, oh my God, I can't attain that, it's impossible. Now that's your belief, and that's where your energy stays, and that's what you bring more of. Law of attraction, right? The trick is to never lose your belief and your focus. Always guide your mind. Okay? So that's the law of rhythm. The next thing we'll cover is really the principle of creation. And you know, before I get into some of that, I just wanted to speak to a little bit about you know, our ego. So and really the levels that we exist. So we know about the third dimension. I've talked a little bit about the polarity. You know, relative to all the energy of the universe, we are all of the energy of the universe. Relative to us, we are, you know, ourselves, by ourselves in our mind, and we're the only ones that exist. So those are the two extremes, the two polarities in that case. And we have this amazing, we have a spiritual side of ourselves. We have our body, we have our mind, and we have our spirit. And you know, basically, if you look at the law of vibration, the vibrational frequencies between those, at the very highest vibration will be when we're at, you know, our consciousness is at the highest point, where we're basically aware of where we stand in the universe. We're thinking as one, you know, part of that universal consciousness. And at the polar opposite is when we're not guiding our minds at all. We're basically just living on instinct. The beauty of our bodies is that we are a spiritual being, and we are basically an animal, a really advanced animal that's been, you know, came into being based on survival instinct. And it's an amazing brain, and it's amazing, you know, subconscious. Just think about all of the things that your subconscious is taking care of without you even being aware. Your heart is beating, you know, blood is pumping, all the cells are being created, generated, you know, degenerated. We basically create a whole new, at a cellular level, we create a brand new body every 60, 90 days. All of our cells get, you know, die and then get regenerated, reborn. All of that is happening without our even consciously being aware of it. You know, our muscles are flexing. Everything is driven from, you know, synapses in our brain. All of that is automatic and just part of your amazing chemistry, right? But that, and you know, those are the things that take care of your day-to-day, you know, existence. And if you don't, if all you're going to do is react, the thing that really puts us apart from some of the, you know, lower, and I'm not going to say lower animals, but, you know, not quite so self-aware animals, let's say, is that they tend to behave on pure reaction. So, you know, it's fight or flight, the fight or flight response. The thing that we're blessed with, is that we, you know, something happens, and we have a point where we can choose to simply react, or we can choose to behave in a way we choose to want to behave. So if someone punches us, if we, you know, out of anger, our first reaction, of course, is to punch back, most people. But we don't have to. We can get punched, and if, you know, you focus and work on really always choosing who you are and who you choose to be. If someone hits you, you can choose to be, you know, who you are, and not simply react to who they are. So they're choosing to simply, you know, react in anger. All of that is usually based in some type of fear. So they react to you in anger. Your first reaction is to react back in similar anger. But you can choose to say, I'm not going to do that because I'm not an angry person. I'm a loving person. You get hit, the instant reaction comes, then your choice comes into play, and you say, I choose not to react. I'm going to always choose to be who I choose to be. Pick those values in people that you admire, and make those traits your own. You know, you can always think of somebody that is just amazing at interpersonal connection, just always happy, always. So, you know, for example, or if you're looking for a relationship, if you want to, you know, take on or mentor, take mentorship from someone that, you know, has a loving relationship, always has been. You see someone that's been together for decades and still love each other, you know, still after decades of every day-to-day grind and all of that, they still find a way to love each other. So you can use those as examples and make that trait part of your own. Okay? So, so just to so getting back to what I was talking about, we have animalistic instincts, and it's always the first reaction is to just react to whatever we receive, law of reaction. But, you know, what we see on a regular basis is what gets driven into our subconscious. For us to be successful, like it's very easy to say, sure, I'll always focus on the positives. Or today I'm going to say I'm a millionaire, and people get frustrated because, you know, a few days go by and they're not a millionaire and they give up, or a few months, whatever. But it is really a repetition. It's the things that you do in a habitual sense. The things you do on a regular basis that get kind of programmed into your subconscious. So it's really important to regularly focus on who you choose to be, on your goals, who you are physically, mentally, socially, you know, emotionally, and spiritually. Focus on those goals. Who is it that you admire in those areas? Make that part of you. Set goals in each one of those areas, and always focus on them at least once a day, or optimally all throughout the day, several times when you wake up, when you go to bed. Because it's the repetition. When you first say I'm a millionaire, and let's say you're not, your first instinct, the role of your ego and your subconscious is to keep you safe. So it's scary. It's the fear of the unknown when you say I'm going to now attain this new level. That's scary. You have no idea how in the world you're going to accomplish that, being, say, a millionaire. It's scary. What if you fail? All those questions of self-doubt start coming in. The role of your ego and your subconscious is to keep you safe. So when new things come into play, they see that as threats. And you know, it's, you know, the animal instinct kicks in and is saying, whoa, slow down, get back to safeness, right? But you need to, to grow as a person and to experience brand new experiences and create new things. You have to go places you've never been. You have no idea how to get there. That's natural. Okay, so just understand that the first reaction in yourself is always going to be, whoa. When you say, I am a millionaire, your first instinct is going to, whoa, no you're not, and then all those things. But you just keep at it. It's the repetition. Your mind doesn't your subconscious doesn't know, right from wrong. It just knows that, what you believe over time. It just needs to see something, hundreds and thousands of times for it to get programmed in your subconscious. When the first thought, when you say I'm a millionaire, is, yeah, I'm a millionaire, that's when you become and are a millionaire, because that's your belief. Now your mind starts focusing on ways to become the millionaire, and you start putting out that type of energy, and law of attraction kicks in, and law of reaction. You start acting in doing those things that will let you attain becoming a millionaire, for example. Okay? And it's really happening instantaneously. Everything that you see, every situation that someone else is doing, you're constantly putting yourself in that situation. If you would do it if they did it the same way you would, they're correct and you like them, and if they would do it differently, then they're incorrect and you don't like them. But that's constantly going. Really, where your mind, subconsciously, we just want everybody to be like us, which would be a really boring world. You know what I'm saying? If everybody just agreed with everybody else, that's not what the universe is, and that's not what we're about. But for whatever reason, you know, ingrained in our ego, that's what we want. That's the safe bet. Everybody agrees with you, there's no arguing. So just understand that that's the process that's going on. Okay? You are constantly judging others based on your, you know, view of the world. Okay? So just make sure that next time you get angry, just take a step back and say, why am I angry at this person? Probably because, you know, one of the first things that are almost always said when they're venting to somebody is, you know, I would never do that. If it was me, I would never do whatever. And that's exactly what it is that you're thinking in the back of your mind. That doesn't mean that they're wrong. That just means that subconsciously you're instantly judging them, putting yourself in their shoes, coming up with some conclusion, and then you like them or don't like them based on how close they are to how you would do things. Everywhere in the universe follows the same 3 steps of creation. When you're talking consciousness, which is, you know, amazingly what we are, there are 3 steps. You need to conceive the thing, believe the thing, and then achieve the thing. Those 3 things need to exist in order to create anything. Take a look at anything around you, whatever it is, any profession, anything. Look at the chair you're sitting on. At some point, for that chair to be created, it needed to be conceived. The thought, that thought energy needed to be created first. That's the first step to everything. And that's really the only thing that we have 100% complete control over. Our thoughts and how we perceive things that are going on around us. That's it. You can't control what other people do. You can't control the circumstances in your life. There's so many different forces at play that you cannot control it. We like to think we can. We get very upset if things don't go our way. But that's not how the universe is, right? So you think of the chair that's been created. A thought of that chair came into being first. Then that person or persons believed they could create it. Then they found a way to achieve it, to construct it. And it became into being. And the same is true for anything. Whatever that you see, any circumstance, any, you know, if you want to be if your goal is to be, have a Ryan Reynolds body, Ryan Reynolds did it. If he could do it, someone else can do it. The first thing in your mind when you say, I want Ryan Reynolds body, for example, is, what are you, crazy, you're flabby, etc. I don't have time for, and all of those things, the fear-based, you know, your ego kicks into fear mode and starts telling you why you should just stay exactly where you're at, on autopilot. But you need to overcome that. Keep your eye on the prize, you know, and believe it. Have a strong belief. You're talking about law of attraction, law of vibration. The higher the vibration, you know, basically the way it works is once enough energy is attained or accumulated, that thing becomes reality. So the stronger the energy, the stronger the vibration, the stronger the emotion behind it, the quicker that thing will manifest. So that's why it's important to put yourself in, you know, in that state of creation, whatever it is that you want, and see yourself there. What would it, but really, how would it feel? And put, you know, all your emotion behind it. You know, I'm talking, you know, we're talking about materialistic things, and that's typically what people, you know, and that there's nothing wrong with materialistic things. There's nothing wrong with anything. You know, if money in and of itself is not good or bad, it's what you do with money that is good or bad. So, you know, if you have a lot of money, you can decide to do a lot of good things with that money, right? So, never feel ashamed of wanting something. You know, when we focus on sort of those higher vibrations, forms of ourselves, the spiritual side, there's really a third dimension, which is us. That's kind of ingrained in the body. This is our body, the things we see, the things we touch. That is the third dimension. The fourth dimension is a tie between, you know, there's body, mind, and spirit. So the body is the third dimension. That spirit is that untouchable thing, right? So that's a fourth dimension. That's something that exists. We feel it, we know it exists. You know, we are thinking, feeling, creating, you know, when you feel emotions, that those are the spirit, that's the spiritual side of ourselves that are linked, you know, through the mind. So the body and the mind, that's your conscious, subconscious, are linked. That's how it's all, you know, that's basically your third dimension. Now to get to the fourth dimension, there's a link between our spirit and our mind. Now you're getting into the spiritual side of ourselves, and that's the fourth dimension. And then you get to the oneness, which is the, you know, the universal consciousness. That's the fifth dimension. That's where we're part of the bigger overall picture, the universal picture, part of the overall energy of the universe. And we can tap into the universal mind and get a much clearer picture of where we are in this, you know, overall, you know, universe. There was a real famous experiment that was called the double slit experiment, where they fired a single photon into a metal plate, and it had a single slit. One photon, single slit. And of course, back then, everyone thought, and it is, that a photon is really a particle. It's like a little, you know, ultra-atomically sized baseball shooting through the air. And so going through a single slit, and then they had another one behind it that had two slits. And what you'd think, it would go straight and then hit the back of the plate and nothing would happen. But when you're talking about atomic-sized particles, they're influenced by gravity. When you're talking about that plate, it's not very big to us. But when you're talking about, you know, an atomic level, it's gigantic. It has a lot of gravitational effect to, you know, particles. So it'll slightly turn. So it may get, you know, get too close to one side and turn slightly, and then get through the other slit and turn slightly, and then hit the back of a receiving, you know, wall, not a wall, but, you know, receive where that photon would land on the back panel. So they would expect you shoot one photon, and you know, maybe it would just go straight through the middle slit, and maybe it would go slightly to the right and slightly to the left, and then reach the back panel. What they found was one photon was shot, and at the back there was these infinite, this pattern of infinite, you know, it would hit the back of that panel and see a pattern of infinite particles almost. It would have this, these lines of probability, or these probability lines. It was, you were seeing where, not where the photon was landing, but lines of where the probability of landing were greatest. So you'd see these kind of fuzzy lines, about 8 lines or so, and they were all over. They were, one single photon was showing infinite probability. It's called a probability wave. One photon, infinite numbers, and you're saying, what's going on? That actually brought on the whole wave theory of light. They say, and sometimes, you know, light behaves like a particle, and sometimes light behaves like a wave. Those experiments kind of brought on those questions, and so they adjusted to say, okay, and sometimes, you know, in these circumstances, the formulas you're going to use is like a wave pattern, and in these circumstances, it's like a particle, like a baseball. So they were really perplexed, and so they said, you know what, let's follow this photon. You know, this is impossible. How can one photon have infinite, you know, landing on the other side in an infinite pattern? So the funny thing is, when they followed that photon, it followed a single path. So every time they went to go measure it, it would just have, you'd see one dot on the back of the receiving panel. And so the takeaway to that is, you know, as soon as you consciously follow, is what we were seeing when the photon was shooting through the slits, wasn't where it was landing, it was all the possible areas it could land. Okay? And it wasn't that that particle existed, you know, as soon as you focused your attention, that now all the other ones went away. No, it's just that we were conscious of that one line of existence. It's not that the others went away. All the others are existing at the same time. We're just not consciously aware of those. So that's happening to a particle, and you know, that happens to, you know, you can extrapolate it and say that happens to every single particle and molecule in the universe. Every universe at a quantum level, you know, is You make a slight turn, a slight difference will have a completely different path. And you have infinite possibilities as to what direction your life can go in. So, kind of thinking on that, you can think that every possible scenario of who you are is happening and will happen. There's a version of you that is, has passed away, has died, got hit by a bus. Another one is destitute and a drug addict, and the other is you're a multi-billionaire, helping millions of children or people, whatever. Every version of yourself is possible. Okay? You have an infinite field of probability. You just need to decide and focus on what energy is, where you're going to focus your attention. What version of yourself are you going to create or be aware of? Which line down those infinite paths are you going to take and become aware of in this specific lifetime? Okay?